Cognitive Processing Therapy, or CPT, is an evidence-based intervention proven to be effective in treating people with post-traumatic stress disorder. This video will serve as a brief overview of the basic concepts of CPT. Please note that elements contained within this video are merely bullet points and do not serve as complete and thorough training for CPT. Before implementing CPT, it is important to highlight critical skills utilized in this intervention, without which it is impossible to deliver the treatment effectively. The first is avoiding avoidance. Avoidance is one of the hallmarks of PTSD, and by the time a client has gotten to therapy, they have already gotten really good at avoiding the memories and painful feelings associated with the traumatic event. It is the responsibility of the clinician to work with clients and confront them on their natural tendency to avoid these feelings. The next critical skill is to identify stuck points. PTSD can be thought of as a disorder of non-recovery following trauma. The therapist needs to help the client figure out what is interfering with normal recovery. The final critical skill is using Socratic dialogue, a technique to evoke deeper thought processing through evocative questioning. The first session of therapy will for the most part be about educating the client and not getting into too much detail on the trauma itself. The clinician will provide the client with education about PTSD in order for them to gain understanding of what they are experiencing. A brief review of the most traumatic event will be discussed, leaving the client with an assignment to write an impact statement. An impact statement details how the client thinks about and explains the traumatic event. It also allows the client to examine how the traumatic event affected views of him or herself, other people, and the world. The next session of therapy bridges from the impact statement homework assignment. The client reads the impact statement and the clinician listens for and identifies stuck points with the client. Throughout the reading, the client is also asked to identify emotions that come up. The clinician facilitates and educates the connection between events, thoughts, and feelings. The session concludes with another homework assignment, an ABC worksheet, where the client identifies the activating event, something happened, the belief, I tell myself something, and consequence, I feel something. The following session bridges from the ABC worksheets and uses Socratic dialogue to examine the events, thoughts, and feelings recorded. As the therapeutic alliance strengthens between client and clinician, the heavier portion of treatment ensues. The client is given a homework assignment to record a trauma account, which is written in much more detail than the impact statement. It describes exactly what happens with as many details as possible. The client comes back to session with the trauma account and reads it out loud during therapy. As the client reads, the clinician asks them to identify thoughts and feelings. Stuck points and Socratic dialogue continue to be identified and used during the reading. After this reading and processing, the client is asked to write the trauma account a second time, but this time with further details that have surfaced, including current thoughts and feelings that are evoked as the client writes the narrative. At the next session, the client is instructed to read the new trauma narrative and is asked to focus on the differences between the first and second reading. A similar process of using Socratic dialogue to combat stuck points are used, and blame and fault are also focal points for the clinician to address. Challenging questions are brought up to identify against stuck points, such as, what is your evidence for or against this idea? Or, is your belief based on habit or fact? Subsequent sessions are spent examining stuck points from the narrative using challenging questions. Problematic thinking is further brought to awareness to encourage the client to identify dissonance in thoughts and feelings to reality. Are you jumping to conclusions when evidence is lacking? Are you oversimplifying? Are you mind reading? During this middle to late stage of treatment, a challenging beliefs worksheet is introduced as homework, which encompasses all previous worksheets and homework assignments into one form, with the addition of a new section that allows the client to write alternative beliefs. The Challenging Beliefs worksheet is used for 5 core themes of PTSD, which are safety, trust, power and control, esteem, and intimacy. Intimacy in regards to how one copes, self-soothes, and connects with family and loved ones. During the final sessions, the client is asked to write a final impact statement and is asked to review differences between the beginning to the end. At the conclusion of therapy, the clinician should review the concepts and skills that have been gained during treatment, reinforce that continued recovery depends on the continuing use of the new skills learned, and the patient's willingness to continue overcoming avoidance.